2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
Why is emotional resilience important?
Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
Brannon, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I got my, I'm doing my self-care today. So I got,
what's that?
This is a Stanley, but these are like 3 iterations ago. Like, these aren't cool anymore, so, and it's got Bucky on it too. So
I want to know how that's self-care. Well, you get your drink
full of ice water.
Oh, ice water.
Full of ice water for the day, set up, ready to roll.
Every time I see the Stanley mug, I think of like my addiction to soda. So I was like, that's not great self-care. Good for you.
No,
you're putting water in those things.
Yeah, of course. Like always.
like always.
I mean, it should be that, what is it? Odwalla and a hydro jug. But yeah, since we have 14 Stanleys sitting around my house, I'm sticking with the Stanley.
They're not popular anymore.
No, but yeah. Anyways, do you have a Stanley?
My wife has a Stanley, and then I use the generic, the Walmart brand TAL. So, which, by the way, today does have water in it. So,
does it actually hold the ice, or does it melt in like 2 seconds?
it keeps it cold until my group ends tonight at 8:30.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
So it'll go all day. Yeah,
good. Well, we have a special guest here today. Someone that I work really closely with, who is just incredible and amazing. She's come on to Therapy Utah and just been a huge asset for us and for her clients. So much so that she helps lead our team. And she's also a host of a podcast that's really cool, called the Therapist Question Box, and she can talk more about it later. But I just want to introduce you to Lindsay Schiss. So Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brannon. I'm happy to be here.
So Lindsay has a pretty awesome story and a personal story. And then she's also an amazing therapist. And I'll let her tell her story. But I think she has a lot to offer, both through her personal story, but also her work as a therapist. So Lindsay, could you just kind of get into it? Tell us why you became a therapist, or how this all happened, and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thanks for that introduction. I don't know that I deserve that, but I appreciate it.
Totally do.
Thank you. It's interesting. I never had planned on becoming a therapist, but I really felt like after some of my own life experiences and getting therapy myself, that I wanted to be able to help people in the way that I felt like I received help. So, one of my professors at the University of Utah, that's where I was educated, said, a lot of therapists are wounded healers. And I really believe that we all have some wounds. And when we're willing to look at our own wounds, those are typically the therapists that I think are often the ones that can relate to others and are effective. And so some of my background a little bit, you asked to share a little bit about it. I grew up in what looked like the perfect family. I was raised in Salt Lake. My parents had divorced. And so I was raised with a mom and a stepdad, and we looked really like the perfect family. We had my stepfather was a prominent physician, and my mom was his nurse. And unfortunately, the part that we played wasn't quite what was going on behind closed doors. We had abuse, and there was physical abuse, as well as some drug abuse, as well as mental and emotional abuse. And again, we didn't look that part. We looked like the perfect family, and we did a really good job, by the way, of keeping that look up for everybody. And when I was 17 years old, we all worked at my stepfather's office, and my mom left early for the day to get my brother to a camp. And on my way home, I saw an accident it was an unbelievable car accident. And interestingly enough, as I passed it, I didn't even make the connection about that car that I had recognized as my mom. I just drove home and said to my stepfather that was one of the worst accidents I had ever seen, and that I saw 2 life flight helicopters and an ambulance come, and really had no idea that that was my mom until about 15 or 20 minutes later, when a knock came at the door, and we had 2 police officers that came and told me that accident had been my mom. She was the one driving the car, and my little brother and his good friend were in the car as well. And that my mom had been killed instantly, and that my little brother and his friend were both in critical condition and not expected to make it. And so
Wow.
life, as I knew it, just got turned completely on its head. My mom was really the glue that held our family together, because it was a step family situation. And the next several months were really just spent trying to reconcile this unexpected death, reconcile my new position in the family. I had brothers, and all of a sudden I was taking care of a little brother who, by the way, that's an important part of the story. My little brother and his friend did end up living, but both had major challenges and many surgeries to just make it through. And so my position in the family changed, my role, and all the while trying to grieve the loss of my mom that held our family together. So I think when we talk about, I know that's a lot kind of right out of the gate. And it's really a big part of, I believe, what shaped me in my life, was learning that while that experience was profound, it didn't have to define my entire life. It could be something that I could learn from and grow from. However, I think I got that messaging really quickly after the accident. It was like, hey, how can this be good? How can this be beneficial? And now I look at people, and I work with people that are grieving, and I think, oh, let's feel what you're going through. Let's acknowledge the loss and the pain and all of those things. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about my background, and really what led me to therapy is doing my own work around some of this grief and loss and feelings of abandonment and things like that accompanied that situation.
Lindsay, thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, that's such a hard thing to go through and such a vulnerable thing. Even years later, I'm sure that that's something that has totally shaped you. We're talking today about emotional resilience, and you hear a story like the one you just shared. And as a therapist, we see this all the time, and it's like,
okay, when those big things happen in our lives, it's almost like there's a crossroads that takes place where it's either going to filter itself further down into the depths of misery, despair, hell, or it's going to eventually turn itself up for the better, and it's going to go into what you would call, I think that's a topic we want to talk about today, is emotional resilience, and eventually finding meaning and purpose through whatever it is that we end up going through. And I guess I'm just wondering, as you think about it, you got your own story, you also have your own work that you do on a daily basis, and you kind of hit, I think, one of the first parts of this, which is allowing room for there to be an emotional process. But what would be some of the factors that would help a person, instead of having it change their life for the worse and keep them in hell, help them foster some type of growth, meaning, resilience?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because I really think that is what we're all after, is how do we go through hard things and not let it define our entire life, right? And for me, I think it is recognizing that this is a part of my story, not all of my story. And that when we go through the hard things, I don't want this to define who I am forever, but it is a part of my story. And recognizing that I also have to feel to heal, right? Like, you think about when you get a broken bone. When you get a broken bone, you don't just keep walking on it, right? You actually, the doctor has to set it. They have to manage that and put it in a cast, and they have to set it right. But to set it right is painful. You can't just kind of walk around with this broken limb all the time. And so that feels like a really important part, Tyler, of my message, is to say, before we start jumping into the resilience piece of it, let's feel the loss of it. Let's set that bone correctly and acknowledge all that has happened before we can get to the point of saying, okay, now I'm recognizing that I don't want this to define me. This is not my whole story, and I think for me, I saw a lot of good. My mom and stepdad, there was so much good, and I could take that good, and I could also say, and this is what I don't want. I'm really aware of what I don't want in my life as well. And so really taking control and saying, this is who I want to be and who I don't want to be. And really feeling like I get one wild life. I get like, this is not the way I expected my story to go. This is not what I wanted, but here I am. So I can either become a victim of my circumstance, or I can choose to say, okay, this is not what I wanted or expected, but I want something better and different, and be deliberate about that.
I think what you're saying is important and very, very true. But it's also in process. So, and when you say you have to feel to heal, sometimes you're not ready to say, I see why, I understand, there's purpose here. Sometimes you just need to feel. And, I think about times when I've been grieving, and certain things like certain playlists will come up that I'll just listen to over and over again. And what do you know, when I'm grieving, I like sad songs. And the grief comes in waves. It hits you hard, and I'll cry and feel it. And then it'll kind of lighten up, and you'll start to feel some peace, and then it'll hit you again. And, but there's ways to step into that pain and allow that pain and that process to happen. And I believe, Lindsay, that actually gets you to that place of seeing the purpose. Is as you sit in that pain and you start to feel that peace, you can actually start to recognize the purpose. But if you avoid it, pretend like it's not there, if you stuff it, if you don't go there at all, you kind of don't get the reward from the horrible thing that happened.
Yes. In fact, it's so interesting when you're talking about the sad music, right? Like, why do we love country? Because it resonates. Like, there's something about it that oh, I felt that before. Wait a minute, And as you were talking, it made me think of like feeling nauseated. I mean, it's legitimately to me, I think I would rather have any other sickness than feeling nauseated. Mm-hmm. I hate it the most, but we need, like, nausea is doing something to us. And I want to focus all on that, but really it's sending us a message. And the message is something's off in your body, and you need to pay attention to it, right? Like, it's information for us. Listen. And so, I think sometimes in our culture, it's like, no, we just need to be happy and feel good and kind of do all the things. And I really believe that mental health is not about that. It's not about like just feeling good all the time. It's about having feelings within the context of what's going on in our lives. And more importantly, what are we doing with those feelings? So as you were talking, Brannon, I'm thinking, yeah, listening to sad music, writing things down, really feeling it, and not just having to pull up our bootstraps and pretend we're fine, because we're not sometimes. And it's okay to not be fine.
Yep.
I as you're talking, and I love that idea of you've got to feel to heal. And then Brannon, you talking about music. This happened just last night in our drive home. We were at a Sunday dinner for a family thing. And on the way home, my wife does this assignment with her client. She's a therapist too, where she has them come to their group and they have to share 2 songs. One is what she calls their pain song, and the other one is what she calls their hope or their recovery song. And they tell the story behind each song. And so on the drive home, she was like, hey, to our 2 youngest girls in the car, she said, hey, Paisley and Brindley, like, you guys are going to share your pain and your hope song with us today. And I thought it was so cool because both of my daughters instantly had two songs come to their minds. It wasn't like they had to think about it. And Paisley was like, this is my pain song, Mom. And then she played it. And then we're like, instead of like, trying to like buffer her up, Rihanna, my wife, said, well, why did you pick that one? And then Paisley started crying and she started sharing all these things that she'd been feeling. And I was waiting for me or my wife to be like, yeah, but it's okay. Like now, like it. And instead it was just like this hush, just like, and then my wife sat there for a minute and she said, Paisley, that's really heavy stuff. Thank you for sharing. And she didn't go and give advice or try to like piece her back together or whatever else it was. And you could almost feel like the sacredness in that moment of now there's this pain that's being shared with people that we loved. And it was okay to be in that pain. Right.
How lucky Paisley was in that moment as I'm hearing that. I mean, to have 2 parents as therapists that are willing to just sit in that pain and not try to solve it or get uncomfortable, right? Oh, we're too uncomfortable, but just to sit in that, it's really beautiful. Yeah.
And I thought, and luckily I kind of followed my wife's lead on that because I was ready to jump in and be like, okay, let's do your happy song now. She's like, my wife kind of like looked at me like, just let it sit for a second. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's wait. And then she did share her other song after we kind of processed it for a while. And it was amazing to see even in her body language how that shifted too, where the power of that music was there. But it's okay to have both. And I think that's the fear. People, when they go through something hard, people who see the other person going through the hard thing, they don't know how to tolerate that pain. So they try to fix it for themselves to make you better by telling you at least this or at least that, or you're going to learn this or you're going to learn that. And they don't allow for the actual grieving process to happen. But the other fear that happens is sometimes people get stuck in just the pain and they don't ever get a chance to move through some of that grieving that has to take place. Mm-hmm. And it feels like there's like a weird kind of delicate balance in creating space for the pain while also helping it to move. Yes. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or not.
I do have some thoughts on that. And I think my thoughts are that everybody's movement on that pain is going to be totally different. So how Brannon experiences, how Tyler experiences, it can be very different than how I experience it. And there's no right or wrong to that, right? I think sometimes when we're like, and this is a lot what I got, like, but aren't you grateful? Because look how, like, she's in heaven and this is how she can help you. And like, it was almost trying to tie a bow around it. And I could feel what you just said, Tyler. Like it actually felt yucky because I thought, and I didn't get it until later in my life, but I thought, I think they're uncomfortable with what's happened and they don't know what to say. And you know what I did? I developed a really good cover story, which was, yeah, it's so great because this is, I'm so blessed, blah, blah, blah. And
kind of play along. Yeah.
I totally did. And I really feel blessed that my mom was taken when I was 17 and that our family was left in a really hard situation. No, I didn't feel blessed at the time, but I was trying to make them feel better. Like their discomfort was really more important than my own grieving process. So, I don't know, Tyler, when you asked that question, that there's like a time frame, but I think what it looks like is to honor the grief that's going on in your own mind. And then also to recognize that there is hope in a brighter future. And I really think part of emotional resilience is perspective, that this is a part of my story. This is not all of my story, but it's a part of it, right? I remember being in high school and looking at the boys in high school and thinking, oh man, like this, not, oh man, because there's a lot of great people from Skyline 1999. It's not trying to say that, but I just remember thinking, these are the boys I have, like, that I got to marry. Cause like, that was my whole world, right? I was in high school. I felt like, yes, that was my world. And we weren't in this digital age at that time. My perspective was so limited that when I could like view back and kind of take a step back and go, wait a minute, I got to college and thought, oh, wait a minute. That is definitely not all of the men that I can choose from, right? But sometimes our perspective gets limited in just, we're just in the here right now. This is all that's going on. So perspective would be a big one. You know, I think about people in my life and what I want to try to help people with in therapy. And it's perspective, but perspective brings hope. It just brings hope. Like, it's going to get better, and the good times are going to get hard, and the hard times are going to get better. And that brings hope that it's just not all about right now and the mess we're in right now.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but Skyline was our rival high school. So
where did you go to school, Brannon?
Highland.
But did we beat you every year? And
well, it's because you recruited.
Let's settle the score.
You did, but just kidding. But I love what you're saying about perspective. And I think we talk about getting stuck in a vacuum, just like not being able to see outside of our feelings because we're in survival mode. But there is a whole other world out there beyond our emotions. And if we can work through them, then we get to see another option, another opportunity, another perspective. I want to back up with you, Lindsay, just a little bit and getting into your story, because I think this applies to betrayal trauma a lot. So with betrayal trauma, you know, there's D-Day or discovery, and the world shatters, and it's like, and when that betrayal happens, it's time to grieve. It's very, very painful. But then, you know, the betrayed wakes up the next morning and they have a sick kid, and they have stress, and they have work, and they have this, and they have that. And I think of you and your story of this happened, and then all of a sudden you're taking care of your brother. You're an 18-year-old. You're trying to figure life out, and like what you're doing and how you're handling this. So in the midst of life coming at you and life changing and shifting, you know, how do you make space to actually process these emotions, to get that new perspective?
Oh, Brannon, I think I appreciate you like jumping into the heart of it, because that is the truth. Life keeps happening. Like, I was in high school and papers were still due, and I needed to still like get up and do normal things. I was in student government, and things took a step back for a minute, but like you're saying, how do you like have space to do that and allow yourself the space to heal when life still continues to go on? And, you know, to be honest, my 17-year-old self didn't know this. And I wish I could go back and tell my 17-year-old self that.
I'm sure she didn't. And that's okay.
Good reason. Right? Yeah, for good reason. But, you know, now with clients, I really talk to them about their, like, where are they at from an emotional perspective, and being so aware of that. Like, if they are not in a good place emotionally, that is number one priority, that unless there's a fire going on in their house, that they are really trying to tune into that. I mean, we call it window of tolerance, right? When we talk about where they're at in an emotional state. But I think sometimes we go throughout life and we just push through, like, oh, I feel anxious, so I just keep going, or I'm feeling like something's off, but I just keep pressing through, and I don't really acknowledge what's going on for me. And I really believe in the acknowledging of it and slowing down and saying, wait a minute, taking a couple of deep breaths and saying, what's going on for me? Something's off. I'm not feeling it. And giving ourselves that time to get curious. I just honestly think we don't sit in it, and we just push through it.
I think you just said the key: permission to give yourself that time.
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of us, it's like, no, got to keep moving forward. And you need to stop when there's a lot of pain going on. You need to stop and be aware to process that and give that space for yourself.
Yep. And again, that requires sitting in the yuck. Like, it's not fun to sit in that space of like, what's going on for me and why do I feel this way? Right. I mean, I had an experience a couple weeks, well, it was a couple months ago. Everything in my mind's a few weeks ago, it was a few months ago. And I was at the gym and nothing crazy was happening, but I all of a sudden felt like this, like tightness in my chest, and I felt anxiety come on. And what did I do? I immediately went to this space of like, this is stupid. You're totally fine. Like, you're fine. What are you doing? Right. And I like went to the shame place, which again is ironic as a therapist. Like I went right there.
Yeah.
And then I just took a minute. Like I caught myself and I was like, hold on a minute. Like, what is going on? And I literally, like, this is going to probably sound weird. I put my hand on my heart and I just was like, no one knew, but I put my hand on my heart and I took a couple of deep breaths and I recognized why I was triggered by something.
It's a great example.
It totally made sense to me. And instead of my anxiety getting worse or pushing it down, you know, what's ironic? It like subsided. It didn't totally go away, but like I offered some compassion to myself that I needed at the time. And it totally like made a massive difference as to how I was feeling, but it required me to sit with it for a minute, get curious and get uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you said there. It reminded me of some training I got when I was trained in dialectical behavioral therapy about emotions and how emotions are like waves in the ocean and they rise and they fall. And the more you fight them, the more they actually curl and eventually will bury you if you don't learn how to ride them. And one of the skills that they taught there is that it's actually just a skill to acknowledge and validate an emotion, that any emotion that's validated will already start to decrease. Mm. And what you're saying, I think, is really powerful, that, you know, when you pair that up with the perspective, and I love how you describe perspective as it's not that this thing didn't happen to me. It did happen to me. It's just part of a bigger, broader story. So there's an acknowledgement that it happened and that it mattered. It's just that there's a bigger picture, which then brings the hope. And then when you add in that, hey, I'm having this moment right now, I think about what you just did. Like this, your example was perfect, especially when it comes to anxiety, because we run from anxiety all the time, when in reality, all we would need to do is turn around, see it, get curious with it, acknowledge it, and that actually helps to bring it down, which is counterintuitive to what we think it is.
100%. In fact, Tyler, as you were saying that, it made me think of how I have a lot of clients that suffer with anxiety, and their goal is, can you just make this go away? Can you make, you know, it's like all of us that have anxiety, I run anxious. That's like part of my DNA, I feel like. And when I learned to accept anxiety and I got curious about what it was trying to do for me and how it wasn't bad or it wasn't right, it makes me think of Inside Out, the Inside Out 2. Mm-hmm. Do you guys remember at the end when anxiety just says, I was just trying to help her.
Yeah.
You know, and when you can start having a relationship with some of our mental health struggles like that, you recognize like they're usually just trying to help. These things, these alarms that are going on, just trying to help us, trying to keep us safe. That's their job. So yeah, I think changing that relationship in terms of not running away from, but accepting, makes a huge difference in our ability to be resilient.
I love Inside Out, and I think they did a great job on the second one too, by the way. But the reason that I love it is because with therapy with couples, a lot of times we're teaching people how to hold space and validate each other's pain. And yet we need to teach that to ourselves for ourselves. And like when we talk about parts work, we talk about unburdening a part. So it's a good thing. We love it. We see it. We validate it. And as we validate it, we can unburden it. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with our emotions. I see you. I notice it. I acknowledge that it's there. And as we do that, then it starts to subside. You start to feel some relief from it. If you fight it, if you avoid it, if you do all those things, it just starts to getting bigger and bigger and bigger and wreaking havoc on your life.
Yep. In fact, when you said that, it makes me think of, if I were to tell you, like, Brannon, just don't think about this green microphone in front of you. I want you to think about anything but that green microphone in front of you. What does your brain do? It's like, all I can think about is the green microphone, right? But if you acknowledge it and accept it, then it doesn't have that kind of power.
I can let it go. I can move on in my life.
Well, and one of the things too is one that I think is so important is understanding how to validate self. I think sometimes we look for everybody else, like, am I okay? Am I enough? Is this feeling valid? And the reality is, when you learn to validate yourself and say, you know what, it's valid because I'm experiencing it, period.
Yeah.
Period. And, my experience at the gym, it was valid because it was.
Yeah.
Wasn't because it was right or wrong. It's because it was.
Yes. Yep.
It was just in your face. So Lindsay, as you've been talking, I've been kind of trying to document principles. If we're talking emotional resilience, one is perspective taking, with acknowledging that you have a story that's bigger than just this event that's taking place, and yet this event matters. So validation of the event with a broader perspective, allowing and acknowledging time for those emotions to be there and acknowledge that they're real and that they're there. Whether they should or shouldn't be, practicing the courage of actually just validating self. Did I miss anything there so far?
No, it's great.
Okay. So as we're kind of piecing together other principles then towards this idea of emotional resilience, is there anything else that's like on your heart, especially with your own experience, that you'd want to make sure you add to the recipe we're already creating?
Yeah, thanks for bringing all those together. I would say one of the biggest things as well for emotional resilience is just our connection. What's our connection like to ourselves? And again, as you were talking about validation, I think, what is my connection like to myself? How aware am I of my own experiences and what's going on for me from an emotional perspective? And also, what's my connection like to others? The Surgeon General, America's doctor, he could have chosen anything to focus on. And what did he choose to focus on? He talks about loneliness. His book's awesome. I don't know if you guys have had the chance to read it, but his whole thing is that he believes that loneliness is connected to so many of not just our emotional problems, but our physical problems as well. So I think looking at ourselves and saying, what's my connection like? Do I have a lot of pseudo connections through social media that feel connecting, but maybe don't provide reciprocal connection? What am I doing to connect to people that feel like deep, meaningful connection? That is one that is key. When I'm thinking about connection, actually what comes to my mind is we moved to Costa Rica for the summer during COVID, and we really just wanted our kids to have an experience of a different culture, and kind of, to be really honest, we kind of want to give them a little bit of a kick in the butt and say, all right, let's see what life's like outside of Utah. And ironically, to be honest, guess who got the biggest kick in the butt? I did, by the way. I was humbled. I was like, oh man, this is not very convenient in a different country and all the things. So, we learned, but this is what is so interesting about that experience. After 3 months in Costa Rica, where we really didn't have friends outside of our family, we didn't have obligations to different groups or activities or, whatever. We really just had each other. And I remember saying to my husband, and this might sound a little strange, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I said, I have never felt more a part of our family than I have in these past 3 months. And I felt a deeper connection to my people than I had ever felt before. And I think what it was is there wasn't the distraction of everyday life. And I wasn't running in 80 different directions and trying to do all the things. Like, I was with my people, and that was it. And we were experiencing hard things together, and we were experiencing highs together, amazing, fun things together. But I recognized in that moment that I had felt disconnected to my own family, who you think, well, of course you're connected to your family. But the reality is we can live in the same walls of a home together and feel really disconnected. And that was such an eye-opener to me, that being there, and again, you don't have to go to a foreign country, but boy, it was an eye-opener to me about my connection with my family.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I love the term you coined there of reciprocal connection, because we can so often think about other people or get on that social media and feel like a sense of connection, but it's not actually what you are talking about. And with resilience, the reciprocal connection is a give and a receive kind of a thing. It's not just I saw that person, or I sent even just a little message of, it's like, yeah, we're actually in this together, and we do have some actual real relationship with each other.
Mm-hmm. You're right. It's reciprocal. That's the key.
Reciprocal, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think a key, a key to that, though, Lindsay, I'm sure you felt deep bonds to your family in terms of connection and things. And, you know, you don't get that unless you're vulnerable. And so, like, when we talk about other people and connection and really knowing them, it does take a level of risk. It takes a little bit of opening up. You know, I'm thinking if I'm feeling grief or pain or whatever, and I cry in front of somebody and I cry on their shoulder, and if they hold space for me, they see a part of me that other people don't see. But you know what's going to happen between our connection, like our relationship's really going to solidify because they're being safe for me and I'm being open and vulnerable at the same time. And so it takes some risk, and it takes a willingness to open up and to show yourself, and then for the other person to hold that space to help you process those emotions.
Absolutely. And I could not agree more that when we are vulnerable with ourselves and each other, it breeds connection. You know, I think of the podcast that I'm hosting. It's called, as you mentioned, the Therapist Question Box. And we're getting questions from people that are vulnerable questions. And often they're asking them in a way that it feels a little more anonymous, and they want to get help from a therapist. And I think, you know, it's awesome that we have an opportunity to talk about it. And I'm hoping that we can also have opportunities, not just, you know, through a podcast, but that we're willing to say, this is the hard thing I'm going through. And I want to get some perspective, or maybe I don't even want perspective. Maybe I just want to be seen and known in this way. And, you know, it takes courage. It takes courage to be the one to do that first. And you know what I find is when you're willing to do that, it's amazing what happens to those relationships. They deepen, they broaden, and they feel so much richer because of our willingness to be honest and vulnerable.
Yep.
I think it takes courage on the receiving end too, you know, and that's hard to find people that can willingly receive. As you were talking, I was thinking, I've told this story before on the podcast, but when we very first moved to Idaho several years ago, the week we moved in, our church leader lost his daughter in a car accident. And over the course of the years, getting to know him, a couple of years, about a year and a half after she had passed away, he got up in church and gave a talk he called this talk the Drive-By Casserole. And he said, I just want to tell you my experience in the last year and a half after losing my daughter. And we had so many people drop by food that we had to buy an extra fridge to put in our garage just to hold it all. And he said, but over the course of the last year and a half, there have been 2 times when on a random evening, there's been a knock on the door and a person is there with their arms open saying, I was thinking about you and I wanted to give you a hug today. And he said, I stepped out on the porch and we would cry together. And he said, those 2 visits were worth more than all of the casseroles. And it's that willingness to not have to fix somebody else, to say, I've got someone I can go to and they will hold it and they won't try to force me out of where I'm at. They can be with me and for me. And there's a lot of vulnerability in that too, to learn to be the person who can tolerate that discomfort of not fixing. Right.
Absolutely. To be willing to sit in it with somebody. You know, I think that's the key. That's when I think of empathy. That's what I think of. It's not like, hey, I know if come on out, let's do something different. Let's feel better. Come on, let's go get a shake. It's like, no, let's sit in this together. And I'm here with you and I can sit in the discomfort of your discomfort. I mean, talk about sharing your heart and feeling seen. I mean, that to me is what real human connection's about.
I love casserole, but
you want the casserole too.
No, yeah, I'll take the casserole too, but I love love more than I love casserole. Yeah. So, you know, I tell my clients all the time that there's no such thing as should feel. Like you should feel this way, you should feel that way. There's only feel. I do feel. And it's valid. If you feel it, it is valid. It's real to you, so therefore it's valid. It doesn't mean that feeling is interpreting the exact reality in that moment. Sometimes feelings can get in the way of actually being grounded in reality. But it's still a valid feeling. And because it's a valid feeling and there's no should feel, then it's important I love curiosity. It's important to get curious with why you're feeling that and what's it telling you and who are you. And I want to ask you maybe one last question, Lindsay. We talked about feeling it, sitting in it, processing it, getting support. But you did mention that looking back, you feel like there's some purpose in all the pain and the emotions. And how did that start to develop? How did you start to finally look at this and say, like, wow, I can see God's hand here a little bit? And what was that like for you?
Finding purpose in pain. That is, I think, what we're all hoping for when we have hard things. I think sometimes in the moment, it's hard to find purpose because you're just surviving. You're just trying to get through it. And sometimes the grief can feel so overwhelming. And I think often it comes after the fact. And it can, for me, I feel like it came with some maturity. It came with some time when life could calm down a little bit and I could look and not just be in the mayhem of trying to really survive. I could find purpose in the pain, and I could see where I had felt divine help, where I had seen the goodness of other people, where they had just come to me, and I saw people's hearts and I felt of their goodness, and that changed my life forever. It changed who I am forever. It changed, frankly, my purpose in life, because I saw what it felt like to grieve with others and to sit in some of that discomfort. I had amazing people in my life that chose to step up and really in such a hard time. And so I think sometimes that perspective doesn't necessarily come right away. I think sometimes it happens a little bit later on. However, I think the sooner we can find purpose in our suffering, the more we can manage it, the more it feels like we're not just suffering to suffer, but we're suffering for a greater purpose. And I also think, again, part of that is having hope that there is something bigger and there's something more. To me, optimism was a big deal, to say, like, this is not forever. This pain is not going to last forever. And there is going to be a brighter future. And I want to make that future, for myself. So the sooner I believe you can find purpose in your pain, the more meaningful all of the experiences that we go through become.
I really love that you said purpose in pain, because it validates what we talked about the whole first part of the episode of the purpose is found by learning to be in the pain rather than finding the purpose without the pain. And I love that. So thank you so much for your willingness to come on, Lindsay. Again, you've kind of mentioned it, but for people who want to actually get a little bit more of you, like, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, we have a podcast called The Therapist Question Box, where you're welcome to write in any question that you'd like to give to a therapist, and I'm interviewing therapists and getting their advice and their expertise on all things mental health related. So, yeah, I'd love to have you join us there.
It's amazing, and you can find it on Apple and Spotify, and pretty much wherever you can find podcasts, you can find The Therapist Question Box. So, check it out.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you to our listeners for being here. You're what make the show possible. We really appreciate your feedback when it comes to. So, Lindsay, appreciate you being with us. Listeners, thank you for being with us. And until next time, you guys, keep on keeping on.